Hi there, and welcome to the Be a Better Guide show. I'm your host, Kelsey Toner. Today we're talking World Guide Awards. This is an annual event hosted by the largest travel magazine in the UK, Wanderlust Travel. And I tracked down the editor-in-chief and co-founder, Lyn Hughes, and we talk about the history of the awards, how to get nominated, and what it's like being at an event with some of the top tour guides in the industry. Stay tuned. Hi everyone, and welcome to Be a Better Guide. I'm Kelsey, and today on the show we have Lyn Hughes, Wanderlust magazine co-founder and editor-in-chief. Now, back in 1992, Lyn and her late husband, Paul Morrison, were bored on a flight to South America and basically penciled out what their ideal travel magazine would look like. A few months later, they launched the Wanderlust magazine from their spare bedroom, and Lyn has since won a number of awards, including 2007 and 2008. She was highly commended as Publisher of the Year, an Outstanding Contribution Award from the British Travel Press, and The Times called her one of the 50 most influential people in travel. 10 years ago, the magazine launched the Wanderlust World Guide Awards, which is the only global award for tour leaders and guides. And I've had the great good fortune to be nominated for the award this year, but today, Lyn has agreed to come on Be a Better Guide TV to share her story and let us know what the World Guide Awards are all about. Thanks for being here, Lyn.
Thanks, Kelsey.
So let's start with Wanderlust magazine. Is it true that you sort of started the idea and sketched this out on the back of a barf bag? Is that actually how it happened?
Yes, it was a real no-frills flight. So I'd say back in 1992, it was a very long and boring daytime flight to
come full circle. There's so many no-frills flights these days too, right?
The phrase, of course, had been invented then. But yes, there was nothing to read, nothing to do, no in-flight entertainment. We were travelling really light. We were travelling hand luggage only. And so we hadn't even taken anything really to read or anything. And of course, we found that very frustrating. And so hence we started talking about what a shame it was. Basically, we had nothing to read. We started talking about travel books, travel magazines, and how there weren't really any travel magazines, and certainly none for people like us. And so, yeah, we started to sketch out that idea. And by the time we got off the flight, the idea had really stuck. And in fact, we even came up with the name of the magazine on the flight. Mm-hmm. And it was an idea that just wouldn't go away. And so at the start of that trip, when people used to ask us what we did for a living, we said, we're like management consultants, work in IT. By the end of the trip, we were saying, we're about to launch a magazine.
Oh, that's fantastic. Where was the flight to or from? What was that?
We were heading off to South America with very loose plans. So we actually started off in Ecuador. Mm-hmm. And so Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. And so they have been very special to me since. And I'm fortunate enough to have been back several times. And we also went through Colombia and Venezuela. And then we were actually itching to get back. Other trips, we didn't really want to go home. On this particular trip,
sure,
part of us actually wanted to get back so we could start on, creating a magazine.
Sure. So let folks know a little bit about where the magazine has come. So how many readers do you have now? I mean, you've become pretty big.
Yeah, we're certainly one of the biggest magazines in the UK. We were the only travel magazine in the UK for quite a long time, but these days, hey, there's a lot of them out there. And but we are, arguably perhaps the most successful. We're one of the most popular. And so we're very much aimed at people who are into authentic experiences. And so our readers are primarily into local culture, into nature, into heritage, all those sort of areas. And so that is what we're really strong on. So we pride ourselves in really sort of delving under the skin of a destination. And I guess we were writing about experiential travel before that term, was invented.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're very much about, and about sustainable travel, and about really getting out there and getting to know and appreciate the local culture.
So do you have a lot of readers sorry to interrupt. Do you have a lot of readers internationally? I see you do obviously have a digital version of the magazine. So you've got people reading all over the world now, I imagine.
Got readers in something like 120 countries. And so the print magazine is primarily sold in the UK. That's where most of the readers are. But the website is less than 50% UK, and the rest of it is rest of the world. And then the digital edition goes all over the world. And so, yes, so we find we have readers from Canada, Australia, the States, India, and all over, really.
It must be really exciting.
Yeah, it is, and it really gives an edge to it. And it's lovely if sometimes I am in some far-flung area of the world. I was in the Gobi Desert once. In fact, I'd gone out there to visit one of our award-winning guides. Sometimes, obviously, we like to go out and do a follow-up story about and see them in action out in the field. So I'd gone out to see a guide from Mongolia, and she was actually from the Gobi Desert, so very keen to show me where she was from, meet her family. And then we went deeper into the desert, and I ended up in this lodge that felt like it was at the end of the universe. It was hundreds of miles from anywhere, any other camp or anything. And on my last evening there, I think we were there 3 evenings, and on my last evening, I was talking to the manager of this sort of lodge camp, and I just mentioned Wanderlust, and he immediately said, Wanderlust magazine, why didn't you tell me you were from there?
That's good. That's how we shelter ourselves from the burning rays of the sun, right? It's your magazines.
But I think in that case, he'd been involved in some ice festival or something in Mongolia, and we'd written a tiny, tiny little piece about it in the magazine. But he had that framed,
that's
and everything. And so we're better known by some people in the Gobi Desert than we are in London.
There you go. Well, so my question that came to mind was, looking back, how different is the magazine now from that original sketch? Obviously it must have taken twists and turns along the way, but is there something new and exciting that came about in the last couple of years that just wasn't even on your radar back then?
I think as far as the actual print magazine goes, it is, although it's become thicker and glossier over the years, it is still fundamentally the same. Types of articles we run on the same, and we always have at least a full page after the story where it gives all the factual information so that people get the essential information they need to know to go to that destination or cover that experience. And so all that sort of in-depth type information is still the same. The formula is still the same. Yeah. The audience are still very much the same. But I guess what is different, and if you take the last couple of years, is just, the whole digital revolution. And so what we can do on the website, social media, and it means that we can reach out to so many more people and also in so many different ways. And then, so it's very exciting that, we can still have the classic stories, if you like, and that in-depth information in the magazine. But on the website, that we can react much more quickly to things, that inevitably you end up with so much extra content on a trip that we can do things with on the website. And I think it gives you a real buzz. There's so many more things that you can do.
That's wonderful. So I do want to get into the World Guide Awards here in a moment, but I should let everyone know who's watching out there who doesn't know the Wanderlust story, that Lyn's husband Paul was diagnosed with cancer and actually passed away in December of 2004. So the Wanderlust magazine is carried on as a testament to sort of his passion for travel and adventure. So Lyn, could you tell me a little bit more about Paul and how he shaped the Wanderlust magazine that we know today?
Yeah, so absolutely. Well, there would certainly be no Wanderlust without Paul, and we were very much soulmates and two sides of the same coin. And this, the magazine and the business was very much down to Paul. He was quite extraordinary because although he was very much the business type person on the magazine, while I was the fluffy editor, he was also a very talented writer, photographer, and just had a real passion for the world. And he was quite a shy person, funny enough. So he wasn't perhaps very well known, or not as well known as perhaps he could have been in say, some travel circles, because he would never put himself out there.
Mm-hmm.
He would never sort of sat here and done this interview, for instance.
Sure.
But and a very modest person, but he cared deeply about the world and about people. And as a result, it meant that whenever he went traveling, he always struck up a relationship with the people he met. And it meant that he had friends all around the world, and he was very good at keeping in touch with people. And, whenever he came back from a trip, he would have a list of, right, I need to send this book to this person and a book of this to this person.
Isn't
and this
that wonderful?
These two, and this person, I left my boots behind because they needed boots. And inevitably, because of his curiosity about the world and because of the way he felt about it, he felt passionately about guides. He felt that a good guide, a good leader, really opened up the world to you as a traveller. And so whenever, if we arrived somewhere and it was, you've gone from, say, desert to mountains and you're suddenly in this new environment, or if you visited a national park, whatever you were doing, he would straight away say, right, we need to find out who's the best guide in the area, who can bring this to life and really tell us about it. And so even when we were travelling completely independently, that was always uppermost in his mind, that he would want to meet a guide. And hence he did keep in touch as well with a lot of guides as well after we travelled. And so
it sounds a bit like his philosophy and his ideas about travel have sort of influenced these World Guide Awards to a certain extent.
Absolutely. And in fact, so after he did die, we had a lot of conversations in the office about what to do to life, and we kept talking about because we do the UK's biggest travel photography competition, for instance, each year. We run that, and we did talk about possibly slightly rebranding that, bringing his influence into that, or we talked about launching some other sort of award in his memory. But the thing I kept coming back to, even though he loved photography, he loved writing, the thing I kept coming back to was how he felt about guides and, just how important they were. And it struck me whenever I had to write anything about him, because, obituaries appeared or I would be interviewed about him. And it was always the thing that struck me was how he kept talking about guides. And so we launched the first awards with no idea how on earth we were going to judge them. But it was just like, right,
we'll figure that out.
We'll do it. Yeah, we'll work it out. So hence that's what we did. It just seemed the natural thing to do.
Oh, that's great. So that was 10 years ago. What has that process been like over the last few years? It sounds like, from what I've been able to find through research, that it's just gotten bigger and bigger and been successful.
Yeah, no, it's grown each year, which only makes it harder to judge each year as well. But we get thousands of guides nominated each year, and so I think we're up to say 3,000 or 4,000 guides nominated, and the guides are nominated by their clients. So a guide can't self-nominate, for instance. It comes from what were originally were our readers. But of course, as it's grown and grown and grown, and it's been able to go viral because of digital, we're now getting nominations from people who perhaps you've never heard of Wanderlust, but they've heard somehow about the World Guide Awards, and so they've nominated an outstanding guide. And it never ceases, even though we've been doing it for 10 years. It never ceases still to give me a thrill when I see and read how important these guides have been, to people, and how they've sometimes even changed people's lives. They've been such an inspiration.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. It must be really touching to have just gotten such an overwhelming response from people around the world who do want to celebrate these people who really have touched their lives.
Yeah, no, they do, and you get the whole gamut. You get the people who say things like, well, such and such went wrong on my trip, because inevitably sometimes you can fall ill, have an accident, have something unfortunate happen. But this guide made it absolutely, such a good experience that, hey,
now I know all about the Italian medical system, he took me through,
It's fascinating. Get people who have actually taken up a new hobby or a new interest, because it's something they never thought they'd be interested in, but just because the guide had given them such an insight into it. There have been people who have been introduced perhaps to a charity or a community project, because, again, they have seen it, because, the guide has taken it to them or told them about something. And so they have found that even after the trip, they have got involved in that. Or it might just be that sometimes they're very humble and they say, actually, I learned so much about myself that this guide has inspired me to make some changes in my life and in the way I live. As a result, I feel that I've changed.
Yeah.
And it could be tear-jerking.
Because, travel can have that impact, as you know well, but the guide experience is just wonderful. So tell me a bit more about the judges. Looking at your roster over the years, you've had some very interesting and oftentimes famous people who get involved in these awards.
Yes, we try and have a mix. So the judging panel is usually at least 8 people. It goes through different stages of judging, I'd say. Actually, the first stage, particularly as it keeps growing, we're getting so many. The first stage is done here, and it's not a numbers game, because sometimes I see people saying vote, and I try to ban the vote word. It's not a vote. Yeah. We call for nominations initially. And so people have an online form to fill out, or they can, just send it themselves in an email. But what we originally asked for is them to tell us about the guide as regards their communication skills, because obviously a good guide or leader has to be able to communicate really well. And even, with people where perhaps English isn't their first language, with people who might be difficult, and with people who, they perhaps even signed up for the wrong trip or something. There's the whole range of communication skills. They've got to have knowledge, of course, and a lot of people these days are well travelled, and if they think that the guide or leader actually knows less than them, then they can come very unstuck. So they've got to have the knowledge, they've got to be able to communicate that, and of course they've got to have empathy, because you might have a guide who's wonderful on all the temples in Cambodia, but actually you might be templed out by day 2 as a client, and you might be feeling down, or you might just not be very interested. You might just want to go and have a beer somewhere, or you might go and want to see a market instead, whatever. So the guide has got to be able to obviously respect that, and look after that client as an individual. And so those are the 3 criteria that perhaps form the basis of the judging, and those stages. Once we have the shortlist, and it's painful enough to get to the shortlist, then we get the judges together. But before that, we actually put a call out, we publish the shortlist, and we ask for testimonials and more information on those guides. And that's where it gets really interesting, and at that stage as well, the guides, peers, the people they know through their travels, anybody at that time can sort of jump in and give more information on the guide. And that way we build up a much more rounded picture as well of the guide. And so we end up with a file on every guide.
Oh, gosh, that's great. So if somebody is looking for some of the top guides in the world, you know where to go. Head office in London.
Yeah, so we have a stack of information on them. We end up with so much. And so as I say, we get much more round picture. So the judges receive these files on the guides, and they have quite a little time to go through them and really look into them. And if they have any questions that they want us to ask of the guides, then obviously we will go back to the guides. And we'll also sometimes ask around the industry, because sometimes there are obviously people behind the scenes in the travel industry who will sometimes have a view on some of these people as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of work goes into it. The judges themselves, as I said, there's at least 8. They're a real mixture. We have some people who have been guides themselves and so really know what it's like to be a guide. And so they're very, very experienced, and they've perhaps been used to recruiting guides, training guides, and so on. Yeah. So they really know that stuff.
And then you mix that up with some funny people as well.
Yeah. Celebrities or whatever as well. Yeah. But again, they are people who are very well travelled.
Oh, absolutely.
So the sort of people we have had, Michael Palin.
Monty.
Yeah, from television. A lot of people know from Monty Python.
Yeah.
And he's actually a very, very keen traveller.
He had a show, didn't he? Was that? I don't know if it was on TV in Canada, but did he do a travel show at some point?
Yeah, he's done several travel shows, and like Round the World in 80 Days, and he's done a lot of other ones as well on just parts of the world, Himalaya, Sahara.
Oh, wow.
They go out on a lot of the cable and satellite stations these days. They all started off on BBC. But he's recognised everywhere in the world. And he said sometimes it's through the travel shows, and they don't know Monty Python, but they know the travel shows. And sometimes it's the other way around.
That's right.
Yeah, but he is one of the biggest household names, perhaps, in the United Kingdom. And so we're pleased that he's such a big supporter of it. And so some years he's a judge. It obviously depends always on his commitments. He's a big, big supporter of the awards, and he tries to be involved with it. Bill Bryson, Bill Bryson, who's ironically better known in the UK than in perhaps the States and Canada.
Well, he's very well known here, certainly with the number of his, he's aimed his sort of comedic and satirical lens at the US as well. And no, he's very well known. I love his Walk in the Woods too. Is obviously
Walk in the Woods, which of course is coming out as a movie this year.
It's coming out as what?
Yeah, it's a movie this year.
Oh, Get Out. I had no idea.
It's due out in September, I think.
Oh, brilliant. That's really exciting for him.
Yeah, so Bill is a big supporter, and he has been involved every single year since it started, because he had a lot of respect for Paul. In fact, all the judges had met Paul, but Bill in particular felt very close to Paul. So he has been a huge supporter of the awards. And then a couple of other British television personalities, like Kate Humble is a television personality over here for wildlife and nature and travel programs, and she's very often involved. So, so although we do get some people involved who are perhaps, personalities in that way, there are always people who share the values of the awards and who are well travelled themselves, and so absolutely get it,
That's great. So what happens when for tour guides over the years, if you get to that final stage and they win, what does that look like for the top guide of 2011 or 12 or wherever it was?
Right. Well, we actually find that the guides themselves, of course, they're such remarkable people that they win a bursary, but they inevitably don't want to spend the bursary on themselves. And so they may perhaps use a small part of it, perhaps for some further training or education in some way. But very often they want to give all or the lion's share of it to some pet project. Because, of course, being well-travelled themselves or being in the countries they're based in, they've sometimes seen projects or they're already involved in projects. And so they see this as an opportunity to support those projects.
As charities and non-profit organisations.
NGOs and so on. So, for instance, last year's winner was a guide from Peru called Efraín Valles. And he's actually from the Andes, and he was a street kid himself in Cuzco, and he now supports a school in Cuzco. It's a school for girls, because it's very hard there for girls to get education. in these remote parts of Peru, because the families typically, they might think about sending the boys for education, but they very often keep the girls at home to help at home.
Sure.
And so there's been an initiative there to try and give girls schooling, and a friend was already very involved in that. And so he turned out to be not only an absolutely remarkable guide and very well known in the area as a guide, but he was already a governor of the school and a big supporter of it. And so, of course, he was particularly delighted to win, because it both meant that he could give some money to the school, but it also meant, of course, that it meant a lot of exposure as well for the school. And so it means that, for instance, people have heard about this now. If they're going to Cuzco, sometimes they get in touch with the school and ask if they can visit it.
Oh, that's fantastic. And isn't that wonderful too, how an appreciation too that these guides, who are oftentimes local guides, but may be expats or living in a place, can have that kind of insight, because day in, day out, they're living around the world, and everywhere has got its unique challenges and problems, and they can really, I think, bring those to light and help bring awareness to issues that a lot of times would maybe just not even be on the radar for folks who are traveling in that country.
No, absolutely, and that's what we really find. And although I will say, that when it comes to the judging, we judge the guides very much on their guiding skills and so on. But what we do find is that an awful lot, having said that, what we do find that an awful lot of them do have in common is exactly what you say. It is the fact that they've often perhaps enhanced their clients' trips by actually giving them an insight into some of the issues or some of the charities that need assistance or so on. And that very much seems to go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So you probably keep in touch with some of these guides that have won over the years. Is there? I can imagine too, if for people who are independent guides, or obviously if this is part of their job, their employment, their livelihood, then that's certainly a boon. And there's probably lots of people trying to seek out so and so who's won this award. Has it been in your communications with the guides have won? Has it affected their sort of careers, their trajectories?
Yes, and it's sometimes something actually that sometimes has to be managed, because it can actually cause a few difficulties. Because of course, what can happen is that a client then wants to travel with those particular guides. And so, for instance, I mentioned the guide in Mongolia, and it just so happened that while I was out there, there was two American families had come out there and booked her on the, based on the fact that she was a winner in the awards. But of course, it meant as well that they wanted her with them every single day of their trip. And she had already explained before the book that she was available for so many days, but then she would be handing over for a couple of days to a couple of other people for in a segment of it. And of course, these clients, when I was there, this came back up, and they were sort of, no, you've got to stay with us. And
I could see that. Imagine as a company, if you were contracting with that guide, then you've got to deal with all these people saying, "Oh, we want this person." Yeah,
you have got to deal with it, and it's something I do have to warn sometimes the companies or the bosses or whatever, and different companies deal with it in different ways. And so what some of them do is they might put on a special, perhaps a special departure. With the guide, for instance, if it's one that's a group course, it might be that they'll put on some special groups with the guide, and they'll actually flag it up that it is with this particular guide, and they'll encourage people into those trips. But they'll say for the other trips throughout the year, they can't guarantee you're going to get the guide. But these are the departures where you can, and sometimes it means, and equally, if it's one where it's more, private guiding, then sometimes, they might obviously charge a bit of a premium, or again, if you want to guarantee having that particular guide. So it just varies, depending on the circumstances. But it certainly, yes, it does give a boost to the guide's career.
Mm-hmm.
And, but again, what's very heartening is so often the guides feedback that when they've got the award, and it's got to be said, although we do have an overall winner, we try to play that down a little bit, and we award a gold, silver, and bronze, and sometimes even more than that. So, you know, they're all winners. In fact, even just the fact they're in the shortlist is incredible. So well done, Kelsey. You know.
Thank you. It's great. So I was just going to say.
Yeah, I was just going to say though that what many of these guides say is comment on is how it gives a boost to their peers, to the people they work with, and the teams around them as well. It really gives everybody a bit of a glow. The fact that, you know, they've been recognised.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most incredible things about these awards is that it does highlight a very hardworking group of people that, saying this as a tour guide for many years, are often underappreciated. That these you know, guides work sometimes day and night or on call 24 hours a day. You know, put an incredible amount of effort into, you know, like you're talking about before, personalizing the experience for every person that comes on board, and they can make a huge difference in people's lives. But it's not the most celebrated, you know, recognized, I guess, a job in the world. So I mean, I love that the World Guide Awards is sort of highlighting that, and not only hey, remember these incredible people who are making our vacations wonderful, but here are some of the best ones. Or, you know, it creates a nice incentive for guides to work harder too, and be the best that they can be. So I think that's big thumbs up to Wanderlust for recognizing that. What do you think about this? I kind of see it as the rise of peer-to-peer technology, and now more than ever, it's really easy to connect with local tour guides all over the world. Have you gotten a sense of a shifting landscape as you've sort of hosted these awards, or how do you foresee the next few years with guiding?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And I think, the whole peer-to-peer thing is interesting. It is revolutionising the way that people travel, because certainly, you know, if you were going to go, for instance, to a city, you know, say if you wanted to go to Rome, to Barcelona, if I wanted to visit Boston or Vancouver, then you might argue that you wouldn't use a traditional travel company anymore. You would probably use, you know, some of these peer-to-peer sites to arrange your accommodation, and then to, if you want to, look for a local guide. And I do think that offers up a great opportunity as well for people to be guides, doesn't it? And really, you know, show people their backyard, which is lots of fun.
And you can see the evolution of the world is just revolving more and more around each of us. So the internet and these peer-to-peer services. So maybe I'm really into hummingbirds. You know, I just get up in the morning and, you know, read Hummingbird Weekly, and then, you know, go to my feeders, and that's my whole life. I can now go to, Ecuador or Costa Rica or wherever, and find somebody who's got that same passion, find somebody who can create a tailored experience just for me in that place. I mean, it's pretty incredible how many more options I think are going to be available for people.
No, very much so. Absolutely right. It does mean that people can follow their passion, and they can find that local expert to help them. And you know, I find exactly the same myself when I travel. I've got certain interests, horses, and wine used to be being an interest, which I didn't quite realise I had, but somehow I do keep ending up in wineries and vineyards. So.
I think lots of people can relate. Yeah,
but increasingly, yes. And so it does mean as you carry on traveling as well, then you realise that, hey, you know, I wonder if there is somebody who can really give me an insight into this. And I think that's really exciting, and it offers up so many more opportunities for guides as well, where they don't just have to, you know, follow a formula. It means that, you know, they themselves can make it known what they are expert on, and really try and get that out there.
Yeah,
So
I have a couple more questions. Just thinking, as you know, in the future, if you are a guide or tour leader or tour operator out there, and you're thinking of applying to the award, I mean, the online reputation is obviously very important. But is that something that you factor in terms of the guide applications, or are you looking at TripAdvisor or these sorts of other feedback sites?
Um, when we're building up the sort of picture of each guide, and we still find that the best way is actually the quality of the nominations we get and the quality of the testimonials from the clients. And this is the remarkable thing, because if a client has travelled, with a guide, with a leader, and that guide or leader has really, really touched them, then they will write volumes. They will write thousands and thousands of words about that guide or leader.
Oh, wow.
And, they really pour it out. And those are the nominations that really make a difference. And then also, as I say, sometimes, it might be hotel owners, lodge owners, it might be a tour company's bosses or other employees. It can be all sorts of people that, we will get actually, say, a hotel manager emailing in saying, I get so many groups, parties coming through our hotel, because we're right by the gates of wherever, and I've got to say, this guide, he is the one that is the outstanding one, he's known to be the best one, we all feel that way. And so those sort of things make a difference. And yeah, we will, we'll do a lot of Googling ourselves, and sometimes there's information, like say on review sites or whatever. But actually, it's the people actually emailing us direct that really make a difference.
Okay, that's good to know.
They share it, if that person is good.
Yeah,
people know,
and that's something that'd be difficult to fudge or difficult to make up to, whereas sometimes online reviewing sites can be called into question a little bit. Another point here is, if say you're nominated as a guide and you don't win that particular year, are you able to be nominated in following years? Is that something that's allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we do find that there are certain names that come up every year. And because, there is that consistency, and they are good guides. And we've had, sometimes I haven't even always appreciated it, but I think we had a winner, it was last year or the year before, where at the actual ceremony, just beforehand, he said to me, he said, I'm so pleased because I know, if you remember, I was commended 2 years ago. I was thinking, oh gosh.
Yeah.
Come on, that, yes, of course you were.
Check the files.
Yeah, you were. So no, there's certain names come up a lot, and certainly people who have been commended or highly commended, shortlisted one year, they've sometimes have gone on to be a winner the next. And just like previous winners, people will still be sending in nominations for them, and that is absolutely fine. Yes. Absolutely.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's just about time to let Lyn get back to editing a world travel magazine. But I did want to put you on the spot just for a moment here. What would be your biggest pet peeve about tour guides? If you were able to reach out and talk to all the tour guides around the world, is there something you would tell them to stop doing right now?
I think the ones who, and I must admit, I've had some brilliant ones over the years, and I've had the occasional very poor one as well. And for me, in my job, for instance, when I go out somewhere and I've got a story of mine, I'm looking at a story, and I always arrange a guide. And very occasionally, I've had to kind of get rid of that guide, sack them, whatever. Yeah. It's only very rarely, fortunately, but it does happen. And I think it is when a guide talks rather than listens. And so when a guide or leader, they think, this is the itinerary, whatever, or this is what I've been booked to do, this is what we're doing. And so they'll say, right, we've got to go here, or they'll just talk. Yeah, here's this amazing history, blah, blah. And you say, whoa. Yeah. Actually, can we please just go and see that over there instead? You know. And unfortunately, there are still some guides like that. They've got their set itinerary, their set route, or they've got their set spiel that they say, and they're not really tuning into the client and thinking, well, what does the client want out of this? You know, what are they trying to do?
Well, tour guides, you've heard it here from Lyn, Wanderlust editor-in-chief. You've got to lose the script. You know, you've got to be able to be flexible and moving. So for all of folks who do want to learn more about Wanderlust, it's wanderlust.co.uk. Is that correct for the website?
Wanderlust.co.uk, yeah.
Okay, and for World Guide Awards, it seems to be the process is really almost year-round. It seems so. When are nominations sort of opening up again, I guess, for the next round of awards?
We usually open nominations as soon as the ceremony is over each October.
Okay.
So we start promoting it again each October. Having said that, nominations are allowed throughout the year, but the key time really for nominations, and where it's very easy to find those links to nominate, is between the middle of October and end of February. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Lyn, on behalf of tour guides and tour leaders around the globe, I want to thank you for all you're doing with the annual Guide Awards. It's celebrating guiding excellence and bringing a little bit of recognition to those hardworking folks. And I'd love to end this wonderful quote from the late Paul Morrison, who said, "Once you've got Wanderlust in your blood, you've got it for life." And I think that's just wonderful. I know I can relate to it, and I imagine lots of tour guides around the world can as well. Lyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.